It's a sweltering July afternoon in 1992, in the sun-baked heart of rural Mississippi, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of magnolias and unspoken sins. The grand old plantation house, once a symbol of Southern opulence, now a faded relic of faded glory, buzzes with the laughter of children. Dozens of them, dressed in crisp white linens and frilly dresses, scamper across the manicured lawns, their tiny hands clutching paper fans, as they play tag around the towering oak trees draped in Spanish moss. It's the wedding day of the estate's young heir, Thomas Hargrove, to his blushing bride, Eliza. The family matriarch, stern and silver-haired Evelyn Hargrove, stands on the veranda, her eyes gleaming with pride as she watches her grandchildren and great-nieces and nephews frolic. Champagne flows for the adults, but for the children, long tables groan under the weight of a lavish spread. Crystal bowls brimming with sweet tea punch, platters of iced petit fours and pitchers of shimmering lemonade, freshly squeezed that morning by the one person no one notices. The silent, shadowy figure in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she stirs in the final, invisible ingredient. That figure is Rosetta Mae Johnson, 52 years old, her face etched with lines that whisper of decades of silent suffering. For 35 years, she has toiled in that very house, scrubbing floors on her knees until they bled, cooking meals with calloused hands that never tasted the food she prepared, enduring the Hargroves' casual cruelties as if they were the natural order of things. But today, as the children, innocent extensions of the family that broke her spirit, line up eagerly for their treats, Rosetta's eyes lock onto Evelyn's from across the yard. In that frozen instant, a chill wind cuts through the heat, and Rosetta whispers to herself, "Today, the chains break." By dusk, as screams pierce the twilight and tiny bodies convulse on the grass, the wedding bells toll not for joy, but for a reckoning no one saw coming. From this heart-stopping moment, a storm of emotions crashes over you. The icy grip of fear as you realize innocence was the target. The burning intrigue of how a lifetime of bondage forged this unimaginable act. The raw empathy for a woman whose pain was buried deeper than any grave. The creeping horror that evil can hide in plain sight, wearing an apron, and the suffocating suspense of what drove her to this edge. You're plunged into a dark tunnel now, viewer, where every shadow hides a secret, and what emerges at the end will scar your understanding of the human soul forever. Behind this poisoned paradise lies an unexpected twist, a hidden diary unearthed years later, revealing not just revenge, but a psychiatric labyrinth of fractured identities, implanted memories, and a diagnosis so bizarre, it blurred the line between victim and monster. Few know the full truth, that Rosetta wasn't born broken, but molded by a mind that splintered under the weight of generational trauma, turning her into something the courts called the echo slave, a psyche that echoed the horrors inflicted upon her, replaying them in reverse until justice became poison. Unsettling questions claw at you already. What buried memory from her childhood chains snapped on that wedding day? How did the Hargroves' kindness mask a deeper psychiatric experiment gone wrong? And the most chilling, could anyone, yes, even you, harbor such a dormant rage, waiting for its trigger? These riddles won't unravel until the very end, so hold on tight. This case rips open the fragile veil of morality, exposing how the human mind, that unpredictable labyrinth, can twist benevolence into barbarity. It whispers a terrifying truth. In the face of unchecked evil, vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's the spark that ignites the inferno. Anyone, anywhere, could be one unspoken grievance away from shattering. Now let's connect right here, you and me, in this shared descent into the inexplicable. Hit that Malikewan button, not just to support, but so more souls can stumble upon these hidden psychiatric abysses, pulling them into the light of truth they never knew they craved. And in the comments below, type these exact words: "I'm ready to discover the truth about this story." By doing so, you're not just engaging, you're forging an emotional bond with Rosetta's ghost, vowing to walk her path of shadows. You become part of our unbreakable community, a fellowship of truth-seekers who dare to probe what society buries deep. We congratulate you, brave one, for stepping into this circle, for choosing curiosity over comfort, revelation over denial. You're not alone. You're elite. Prepare yourself, because what comes next contains a key revelation that will forever change the way you see the human mind. As the sun dipped lower on that fateful wedding day in 1992, casting elongated shadows across the Hargrove estate like fingers clutching at the earth. The first signs of catastrophe unfolded not with screams, but with an eerie hush. Little Emily Hargrove, all of 7 years old with curls bouncing like golden springs, was the first to falter. She reached for another glass of the shimmering lemonade, her small fingers wrapping around the cool crystal, when suddenly her eyes widened, not in delight, but in a glaze of confusion. She set the glass down untouched, a faint tremor in her hand, before slumping gently against the tablecloth, her head resting on her arm as if in sudden nap. The other children, oblivious at first, continued their games, their laughter a cruel counterpoint to the poison coursing through their veins. Rat poison, meticulously ground into a fine powder and dissolved into the pitchers reserved exclusively for the young ones, a detail that would later haunt investigators as deliberate, calculated cruelty. But to understand how Rosetta Mae Johnson reached this precipice of vengeance, we must rewind the clock, delving into the shadowed corridors of her past, where the seeds of this psychiatric nightmare were sown decades earlier. Born in 1940 in the dusty backroads of Delta, Mississippi, Rosetta entered a world still echoing with the ghosts of slavery, though the chains were now invisible, forged from economic desperation and familial obligation. Her mother, Lila Mae, had been a sharecropper's daughter, toiling in cotton fields from dawn till dusk, her back bent under the weight of sacks heavier than her dreams. Lila's own mother had worked for the Hargroves' predecessors, scrubbing floors in the big house for pennies and promises that never materialized. When Lila fell ill with tuberculosis in 1955, leaving 15-year-old Rosetta orphaned and adrift, it was Evelyn Hargrove, then a young matron of 28, sharp-eyed and imperious, who swooped in like a benevolent vulture. Evelyn appeared at the ramshackle cabin one rain-soaked evening, her umbrella a shield against the mud, offering Rosetta salvation. "Come work for us, child," she had said, her voice honeyed with southern charm that masked a steel core. "Your mama was like family to us. We'll give you a roof, food, and purpose." To a grieving teenager with no kin and no prospects, it sounded like mercy. Rosetta packed her meager belongings, a threadbare dress, a faded photograph of her parents, and a locket with a lock of Lila's hair, into a flour sack, and climbed into the back of Evelyn's gleaming Ford. She didn't know then that this act of kindness was the first link in a chain that would bind her for life, a psychological tether disguised as gratitude. The Hargrove estate, Willow Bend Plantation, sprawled over 500 acres of fertile land, its white columns a testament to antebellum grandeur, restored in the post-war boom. Rosetta was installed in the servants' quarters, a cramped attic room with a slanted ceiling and a single window overlooking the fields where her ancestors had once labored under the lash. Her duties began at 4 a.m., stoking the fireplaces, milking the cows, preparing breakfast for the family of 5, Evelyn, her husband Reginald, and their 3 children, including young Thomas, the groom-to-be, then just a toddler with chubby cheeks and demanding cries. Rosetta's days blurred into a relentless cycle, cooking hearty southern meals of fried chicken, collard greens, and cornbread, laundering linens by hand until her knuckles cracked, polishing silver until it gleamed like Evelyn's scrutinizing gaze. Praise was rare, criticism constant. "Your family now, Rosetta," Evelyn would say, but the words rang hollow, especially when Rosetta was denied a seat at the table, eating leftovers in the kitchen alone. Psychologically, this was the crucible where Rosetta's mind began to fracture, though no one noticed the hairline cracks forming. In the 1950s and early 1960s, mental health in rural Black communities was a taboo shrouded in stigma and superstition. Rosetta internalized her role as the grateful help, a narrative Evelyn reinforced daily. "We saved you from the streets," Evelyn reminded her during moments of exhaustion, when Rosetta dared complain of aches or homesickness. Gratitude became guilt, obligation morphed into ownership. Rosetta's world shrank to the estate's boundaries. She was rarely allowed off the property. Her wages, a pittance deposited into an account she couldn't access without Evelyn's signature, ensuring dependency. Letters from distant cousins went unanswered, intercepted and discarded as distractions. By the 1970s, as civil rights echoes reached even Willow Bend, Rosetta, now in her 30s, watched the world change from afar. Television in the servants' lounge showed marches and speeches, but for her, freedom was illusory. Thomas grew into a strapping young man, spoiled and entitled, treating Rosetta with casual dismissiveness, snapping fingers for coffee, blaming her for misplaced items. His siblings married and moved away, but Rosetta remained the unchanging fixture. Evelyn, aging but unyielding, began to confide in Rosetta during late-night talks over chamomile tea, revealing family secrets, Reginald's affairs, the estate's mounting debts hidden behind facades of wealth. These confessions created a false intimacy, binding Rosetta deeper into the web. She became the keeper of sins, her silence bought with small indulgences, a new apron, a day off once a year. Yet beneath this compliance simmered a growing dissonance. Rosetta started experiencing what she later described in fragmented journal entries, discovered much later, as echoes, vivid dreams where she relived her mother's suffering, but twisted. In them, she wasn't the child but the oppressor wielding power over faceless figures. Waking in sweats, she'd stare at her reflection, seeing not her weary face but fleeting glimpses of Evelyn's stern features superimposed. Psychiatrists would one day label this the onset of dissociative episodes, a coping mechanism for trauma, where the mind splits to endure the unendurable. But in the isolation of Willow Bend, these were dismissed as nerves, or the Lord's tests. Evelyn even took her to a local doctor in 1978, who prescribed valerian root and advised more prayer, less idleness. The 1980s brought subtle shifts. Reginald died in 1985 from a heart attack, leaving Evelyn widowed and more reliant on Rosetta. Thomas returned from college with big ideas, modernizing the plantation into a bed and breakfast, hosting events like weddings to turn profit. Rosetta, at 45, was promoted to head cook, her recipes the draw for guests. But the workload intensified, catering parties, training new hires who came and went, all while Evelyn micromanaged. Thomas's fiancée, Eliza, a city girl from Jackson, arrived in 1990, her modern views clashing with the old ways. She treated Rosetta with pitying kindness, slipping her tips, suggesting she take vacations. But this only deepened the resentment. To Rosetta, Eliza represented the privileged ignorance that perpetuated her cage. In quiet moments, alone in her room, Rosetta began writing in a hidden diary, pages filled with poetic rage. They smile while I bleed inside. The children laugh, but their joy is built on my bones. These entries hinted at the psychiatric storm brewing, a condition akin to complex PTSD layered with emerging delusional parasitosis, where she felt invisible masters crawling under her skin, commanding obedience. Unbeknownst to all, a pivotal incident in 1987 accelerated this. During a family argument, Thomas struck Rosetta across the face for burning the roast, an act Evelyn witnessed but excused as stress. That night, the echoes intensified. Rosetta blacked out, awakening to find the kitchen rearranged, as if another hand had acted. As the 1990s dawned, wedding plans consumed the estate. Thomas and Eliza's nuptials were to be the event of the season, inviting extended family from across the South, dozens of children among them, symbols of the Hargrove legacy Rosetta had nurtured without reward. She was tasked with the children's menu: punches, lemonades, sweets. In the pantry, staring at sacks of flour and jars of preserves, the idea germinated, not as a plan but as a compulsion, an echo demanding balance. They took my childhood, the voice whispered in her mind. Now take theirs. This was no sudden madness, but a slow erosion of self where victimhood inverted into a mirrored monstrosity. The human mind, fragile as spun glass, had warped under decades of subjugation, creating what forensic psychologists would term an echo personality, a secondary identity that replayed inflicted traumas in reverse, seeking equilibrium through symmetry. Rosetta didn't see poison. She saw justice, a reversal of the generational theft that stole her life. And as the wedding day approached, with invitations sent and dresses fitted, Rosetta moved through her routines with mechanical precision, her eyes distant, the diary entries growing frantic, fragmented sketches of children falling like dominoes, captions reading, "The chain ends here." The estate buzzed with anticipation, blind to the storm coalescing in the kitchen where innocence was about to meet its inverted shadow. The clock in the Hargrove estate's grand foyer struck noon, its chimes reverberating through the polished oak floors like a heartbeat, quickening toward doom. As Rosetta Mae Johnson stepped back from the long oak table in the garden pavilion, wiping her flour-dusted hands on her starched apron, the spread for the children was a masterpiece of deceptive innocence. silver pitchers of lemonade infused with fresh mint and lemon zest, their surfaces beaded with condensation that caught the sunlight like diamonds, trays of bite-sized sugar cookies shaped like wedding bells, iced in pastel swirls, and crystal bowls overflowing with fruit punch, a vibrant crimson that masked the bitter undercurrent of the powdered strychnine she had stirred in at dawn, her hands steady as a surgeon's under the compulsion of that inner echo. She had measured it carefully, not enough for instant death, but sufficient to twist their small worlds into agonies of confusion and collapse. A symphony of retribution played on the strings of their unearned privilege. Surveying her work, Rosetta felt a fleeting warmth not of malice but of completion, as if closing a ledger long overdue. Across the lawn, the wedding ceremony unfolded in a haze of white tulle and vows exchanged under an arch of white roses. Thomas Hargrove, dashing in his tailored tuxedo, slipped the ring onto Eliza's finger with a grin that spoke of futures unscarred by shadows. Evelyn, seated in the front row, dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, her silver hair pinned in an elegant chignon, whispering to a cousin, "Our legacy continues." The children, corralled by aunts and uncles, fidgeted in their seats, eyes darting toward the pavilion where the treats awaited like a siren's call. As the minister pronounced the couple man and wife, applause erupted, and the youngsters broke free, a colorful flock racing toward the tables, their shrieks of joy slicing the air. Rosetta watched from the kitchen window, her reflection merging with the scene, a ghost overseeing her own haunting. It began subtly, as poisons often do, weaving through the festivities like an unseen fog. 8-year-old Caleb Hargrove, Thomas's nephew from Atlanta, was the second after Emily to succumb. He gulped down a full glass of punch, smacking his lips with exaggerated delight. Aunt Rosetta makes the best, before chasing it with 2 cookies. Minutes later, as he joined a game of croquet, his mallet slipped from numb fingers and he staggered, laughing it off as clumsiness until his vision blurred, colors bleeding into one another like watercolors in a storm. Nearby, 5-year-old Sophie, Eliza's flower girl niece, clutched her stomach after sipping lemonade, her frilly dress rumpling as she doubled over, whispering, "It tastes funny, Mama," before her legs buckled, depositing her in a heap amid the petunias. Whispers rippled among the adults at first, overtired children, too much sun, but as more faltered, the pavilion became a tableau of creeping disarray. A 4-year-old collapsing mid-laugh, his punch cup rolling into the grass, twins from Mobile seizing gently, their identical faces mirroring twin grimaces of bewilderment. By 1:30 p.m., the air thickened with unspoken dread. 10 children in total, ages 3 to 10, all Hargrove kin or close allies, lay scattered across the lawn, their small chests heaving in erratic rhythms, faces flushed not with play, but with the poison's feverish grip. No blood, no wounds, just an unnatural stillness punctuated by whimpers and the frantic calls of parents. "Emily, wake up, darlin'," a great-aunt cried, shaking the girl's limp form. Thomas, mid-toast to his new in-laws, froze as Eliza's scream pierced the champagne bubbles. "The babies! Something's wrong with the babies!" Evelyn, ever the pillar, strode forward, her face paling as she knelt beside Caleb, pressing fingers to his neck. "Call the doctor, now!" she barked, her voice cracking for the first time in decades. Servants scattered, phones rang in the house, and the wedding photographer, sensing the shift, lowered his camera, the joyful frames now relics of a turning point. Rosetta remained in the kitchen, methodically washing pitchers, her movements deliberate, as if the chaos outside were a distant radio drama. But inside, the echo personality thrummed, a secondary self born of those nocturnal dissociations now fully ascendant. It whispered affirmations. They took your joy, you reclaim it. Balance restored. To the outside world, she was the faithful retainer, but her mind had bifurcated long ago. The primary Rosetta, the compliant servant, retreating into a protective fog, while the echo orchestrated the unraveling. This was no impulsive rage. It was a psychiatric precision, honed over years of suppressed fury where the mind's survival instinct inverted oppression into orchestration. Ambulances wailed up the gravel drive by 2 p.m., red lights flashing against the magnolia blooms like accusations. Paramedics in crisp uniforms swarmed the lawn, tiny forms hoisted onto stretchers, IVs piercing veins to flush the toxin. The local hospital in nearby Greenwood overflowed, Helicopters airlifted the worst cases to Jackson, where pediatric toxicologists confirmed strychnine, rat poison from the estate's barn, its container found pristine on a high shelf, fingerprints only Rosetta's. As sirens faded, the wedding dissolved into a vigil. Thomas pacing the veranda, fists clenched, Eliza sobbing in Evelyn's arms, relatives murmuring prayers in clusters, eyes darting suspiciously toward the kitchen window where Rosetta stood, unmoving. Sheriff Harlan Brooks arrived at 3:45 p.m., a burly man in his 50s with a mustache like a broom bristle, his cruiser kicking up dust. Flanked by 2 deputies, he entered the kitchen, hat in hand. "Rosetta Mae Johnson? We need to talk." She turned slowly, her eyes clear, voice steady. "Yes, sir. The children's punch, I added a little something for the heat. Thought it'd settle their tummies." The confession spilled not as breakdown, but calm recital, as if recounting a recipe. Brooks's face hardened. Cuffs clicked around her wrists, the metal cold against skin that had known warmer chains. As they led her to the cruiser, past Evelyn's stricken gaze, Rosetta paused, meeting the matriarch's eyes. "You saved me once, Miss Evelyn. Now, I'm free." The words hung, a psychic severance. In the squad car, en route to the county jail, Rosetta's composure cracked fractionally, a single tear tracing her cheek, not for guilt but for the echo's satisfaction. Psychologically, this was the apex of her dissociative state. The echo personality, a construct forged in the fires of chronic trauma, had executed its script flawlessly. Forensic analysis would later reveal its roots in what experts termed trauma echo disorder, a rare manifestation of DID where the alter embodies reversed roles. Victim becomes avenger, servant sovereign. But in that moment, as the estate shrank in the rear view, no one grasped the depth. She was simply the poisoner, the monster unveiled. News vans arrived by dusk, their lights piercing the twilight like inquisitive eyes. Headlines screamed, "Wedding horror, maid poisons guests' children." Inside the jail cell, Rosetta sat on the bunk, humming a lullaby her mother once sang. Ironic melody for the silence she imposed. Evelyn, back at Willow Bend, rifled through Rosetta's attic room, discovering the hidden diary under a loose floorboard, pages dense with ink, chronicling not just plans but visions, dreams of children as little masters, their falls symbolic of crumbling dynasties. Evelyn's hands trembled. This was no mere grudge but a mind's manifesto. As night cloaked the estate, investigators combed the kitchen, unearthing more. A locked drawer with newspaper clippings of civil rights poisonings from the 60s, annotated with, "My turn." The puzzle deepened. Rosetta's literacy, self-taught in stolen moments, fueled by a hunger for words that mirrored her unspoken screams. Psych eval scheduled for morning, but whispers among deputies hinted at insanity plea. Thomas, staring at family photos now tainted, felt the first stir of doubt. "She raised us." "How?" Eliza, cradling a rosary, murmured, "The devil in her eyes today." The wedding day ended not with cake but catastrophe's aftertaste, a lingering bitterness that seeped into every Hargrove soul. Rosetta, in her cell, closed her eyes, the echo retreating, leaving the primary self to face the dawn's judgment. But the unraveling was just beginning. Deeper layers awaited, revelations that would twist victim into enigma, exposing how decades of family had engineered a psyche primed for this precise poetic implosion. The fluorescent lights of the Greenwood County Jail buzzed like trapped hornets overhead, casting a sterile pallor over the interrogation room where Rosetta Mae Johnson sat handcuffed to a metal table, her posture straight as a willow rod, eyes fixed on the chipped paint of the opposite wall. It was the morning after the wedding, July 12, 1992, and the air hung thick with the scent of stale coffee and unwashed regret. Sheriff Harlan Brooks paced the linoleum floor, his boots scuffing softly, while Deputy Clara Wilkins, a young woman fresh from the academy with wide eyes and a notepad clutched like a shield, observed from the corner. Rosetta's confession from the previous day lingered in the room like an echo, but now, in the harsh light of scrutiny, it unraveled into something more labyrinthine. "Tell us again, Miss Johnson," Brooks urged, his voice gravelly from a night of chain smoking. "Why the children? What made you choose that poison for those little ones?" Rosetta's lips parted slowly, her response a murmur. "They weren't little ones to me, they were echoes, miniature masters, carrying the weight of what was done. The poison? It was the quietest way to break the circle. As investigators pieced together the timeline, the estate back at Willow Bend transformed from a wedding venue into a crime scene, cordoned with yellow tape fluttering in the breeze like cautionary flags. Forensic teams in white suits combed the kitchen, bagging remnants of lemonade and punch, their tests confirming strychnine levels calibrated for torment rather than swift end, enough to induce seizures and respiratory distress in small bodies, a detail that spoke to premeditation wrapped in psychological subtlety. Evelyn Hargrove, sequestered in the parlor with a glass of bourbon trembling in her hand, recounted Rosetta's decades of service to a pair of detectives from Jackson. She was like a sister, Evelyn insisted, her voice cracking. Raised my babies, cooked every meal. This isn't her. Something snapped. Thomas, red-eyed from a sleepless night at the hospital where the children clung to life on ventilators, added bitterly, "She watched us grow. How could she?" Eliza, pale and withdrawn, mentioned offhand conversations where Rosetta spoke of voices in the walls, dismissed at the time as eccentricities. The diary, now in evidence bags, became the linchpin. Pages dated back to 1980, entries evolving from mundane grievances. Miss Evelyn forgot my birthday again, to cryptic visions. Last night I was not me. I walked the fields as a child, but the chains were on others. The echo laughs. Psychologists summoned for consultation poured over the writings in a makeshift command center at the sheriff's office, their brows furrowing. Dr. Elias Thorne, a forensic psychiatrist from the University of Mississippi Medical Center, arrived by midday, his briefcase stuffed with texts on dissociative disorders. "This isn't simple revenge," he posited during a briefing, flipping through photocopies. "See here, the repetitive motifs of echoes and role reversals. It's suggestive of a fragmented psyche, where trauma manifests as alternate identities enacting symbolic justice." Brooks scratched his head. "So she's crazy?" Thorne shook his head. "Not in the lay sense. This could be dissociative identity disorder, exacerbated by chronic subjugation. The echo might be an alter ego, born to endure what the core self couldn't." Rosetta's initial evaluation unfolded in a holding room converted for the purpose. Thorne seated across from her with a tape recorder whirring softly. "Tell me about the echoes, Rosetta," he began gently, his tone calibrated to coax rather than confront. She tilted her head as if listening to distant music. "They started after Mama died. Quiet at first, like whispers in the cotton fields. But after Mr. Thomas hit me that time, they got louder. Said I was the master now that the children carried the old sins, like parasites in the bloodline." Thorne noted her detachment, the way her voice modulated subtly, as if another speaker borrowed her throat. "And on the wedding day?" he pressed. The echo took the wheel. I watched from afar, like through a window. The poison was her recipe, not mine. This bifurcation stunned the team. It wasn't evasion, but a genuine perceptual split, where accountability dissolved into multiplicity. Back at the estate, more discoveries deepened the enigma. In Rosetta's attic, hidden behind a false panel, deputies found a shoebox of mementos, faded letters from civil rights activists smuggled in during the 60s, a worn copy of The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois, annotated with questions like, "Am I the echo or the original?" and Polaroids of Hargrove children over the years, their faces circled in red ink with captions, "Innocent thieves." Evelyn, confronted with these, collapsed into sobs. I gave her books to read in her spare time. Thought it was kindness. But Thorne saw it differently. Intellectual stimulation in isolation fueled cognitive dissonance, accelerating the psychiatric rift. She was educated enough to question her lot, but trapped enough to internalize it as madness. By evening, media frenzy escalated. Reporters camped outside the jail, cameras flashing as Brooks issued a statement. "Suspect in custody. Motive appears personal, but we're exploring mental health angles." Inside, Rosetta underwent further sessions, hypnosis attempted under Thorne's guidance. In trance, the echo emerged fully, voice deeper, cadence authoritative. "I am the reckoning. The Hargroves built their empire on broken backs. The children? They were the future chains. Poison them and the line ends." Thorne transcribed feverishly, recognizing parallels to historical cases of enslaved individuals' descendants manifesting transgenerational trauma as dissociative states. "It's like the mind archiving pain across generations," he explained to Brooks later over diner coffee. "Rosetta's echo isn't villainy. its survival distorted. Hospital updates trickled in. The children stabilized, though some faced long-term neurological shadows, tremors, memory lapses, echoes of their own. Thomas visited them, guilt gnawing as he recalled childhood pranks at Rosetta's expense, hiding her locket, mocking her accent. "We thought it was harmless," he confided to Eliza. But harmlessness was the illusion. Each slight layered the psychic sediment that birthed the echo. Legal wheels turned. District Attorney Marlene Hayes, a no-nonsense prosecutor with a reputation for tough pleas, reviewed the file. Attempted murder times 10. But with this psych stuff, she consulted Thorne, who advocated for competency evaluation. "She's not fit yet. The alters need integration." Rosetta in her cell sketched on napkins, diagrams of family trees with branches severed, captions reading "Freedom's Price." Guards noted her serenity, contrasting the chaos she unleashed. As night fell, Thorne pondered the broader implications, how systemic inequities forged mental fragilities, turning victims into vessels of inverted justice. The case, he knew, would challenge perceptions, blurring lines between culpability and condition. But for now, the veil cracked wider, revealing not a monster, but a mosaic of shattered selves, each piece reflecting the Hargroves' unwitting hand in their own undoing. The oak-paneled courtroom in the Greenwood County Courthouse hummed with subdued murmurs as the gavel struck sharply at 9 a.m. On September 15, 1992, marking the start of Rosetta Mae Johnson's preliminary hearing, a proceeding that would peel back yet another layer of the psychiatric enigma enveloping Willow Bend. Sunlight filtered through high windows, casting elongated patterns on the floor like bars of a cage, while spectators, local farmers, Hargrove relatives, and a smattering of reporters, filled the benches, their faces a mosaic of curiosity and condemnation. Rosetta sat at the defense table, clad in a simple gray dress provided by her court-appointed attorney Marcus Hale, a bespectacled public defender in his 40s, with a reputation for tenacity in underdog cases. Her hands folded neatly in her lap, she gazed ahead with an inscrutable calm, as if the proceedings were a distant play unfolding on a stage far removed from her inner world. Across the aisle, District Attorney Marlene Hayes stood poised, her sharp suit mirroring her incisive demeanor, flanked by stacks of evidence files that included the diary's photocopies and toxicology reports. "Your Honor," Hayes began, her voice slicing the air, "the state will show that Rosetta Johnson, with premeditated intent, poisoned 10 innocent children at a family wedding, using strychnine to inflict unimaginable suffering. This was no act of madness, but cold calculation," Hale countered softly during his opening. "What we have here is a tragedy born of a broken mind, shaped by decades of systemic cruelty. My client isn't a monster. She's a mirror reflecting the Hargroves' own shadows." Judge Harlan Whitaker, a stern veteran with a white mustache and a penchant for fairness, nodded gravely, signaling the first witness, Evelyn Hargrove. Evelyn took the stand, her posture rigid, voice quavering as she recounted Rosetta's integration into the family. "She came to us as a girl, lost and alone. We gave her everything, a home, purpose. Never once did she complain. But under Hale's cross-examination, cracks emerged. Mrs. Hargrove, did you ever pay Rosetta a fair wage? Allow her vacations? Treat her as equal?" Evelyn faltered, admitting the pittance salary and restricted freedoms, framing them as traditions of the estate. The gallery shifted uneasily. Whispers rippled about old Southern ways clashing with modern scrutiny. Thomas followed, his testimony laced with betrayal. She was like an ant, but that day her eyes, they were different, empty. Eliza added emotional weight, describing Rosetta's pre-wedding mutterings about balancing scales, dismissed as fatigue. The psychiatric testimony elevated the hearing into uncharted territory. Dr. Elias Thorne, sworn in with his credentials gleaming, board-certified in forensic psychiatry, author of papers on trauma-induced dissociations, presented his findings from multiple sessions. "Rosetta exhibits classic signs of dissociative identity disorder," he explained, projecting diary excerpts onto a screen. "The echo alter developed as a protective mechanism against prolonged emotional servitude. It's not volitional, it's survival," Hayes challenged. "So you're saying she didn't know what she was doing?" Thorne clarified. "The core Rosetta was aware but dissociated, watching as the echo acted. This isn't feigned. Neurological scans show atypical brain activity during switches. He referenced similar cases, survivors of prolonged captivity, manifesting avenging alters, their actions symbolic reversals of endured harms. Rosetta herself testified in the afternoon, her voice steady yet distant as if narrating another's life. The echo came in whispers first, after years of bending without breaking. It said the children were the roots of the tree that shaded me out. Poison them and light reaches me. The courtroom fell silent. Jurors exchanged glances, the weight of her words sinking like stones in a pond. Hale guided her gently. Did you want to hurt them? She paused, eyes misting. No, but the echo did. It was tired of carrying the load. Hayes pounced in cross. You bought the poison weeks before. Planned it. Rosetta nodded. The echo planned. I just followed. Behind the scenes, the Hargroves grappled with revelations. In a hospital waiting room where the children underwent therapy for lingering effects, subtle coordination issues, nightmares of that day, Thomas confronted Evelyn. Did we do this? Turn her into this? Evelyn, clutching her pearls, whispered, We helped her. Society changed, not us. But doubt seeded. But Eliza researched similar stories, uncovering articles on modern-day indentured servitude in the South. Psychological tolls ignored. The family hired their own expert, Dr. Lydia Voss, a conservative psychiatrist skeptical of DID, who interviewed Rosetta separately. Malingering, Voss opined in her report. She's using psychobabble to evade justice. Yet even Voss noted inconsistencies. Rosetta's seamless shifts in demeanor, from submissive to assertive, defying simulation. Media coverage intensified, transforming the case into a national talking point. CNN segments debated the poisoned legacy, blending crime with social commentary on racial inequities and mental health stigma. Activists picketed the courthouse, signs reading, Free Rosetta, victim of modern slavery, while counter-protesters demanded justice for the innocents. Inside, evidence mounted, purchase receipts for strychnine from a hardware store 50 miles away, dated a month prior. Witness statements from other servants recalling Rosetta's trances, where she'd stare blankly, muttering about reversing the wheel. By day's end, Judge Whitaker ruled for a full psychiatric competency trial, delaying the main proceedings. This court must determine if Miss Johnson can stand trial, or if her mind is too fractured. Rosetta returned to her cell, where the echo receded further, leaving her with fragmented memories, like puzzle pieces from a dream. She wrote in a new journal provided by Hale, The courtroom echoes too, voices judging what they built. Thorne visited that evening, probing deeper. Under guided recall, another layer emerged. Childhood flashbacks of her mother's tales about great-grandparents' enslavement, internalized as personal burdens. Transgenerational echo, Thorne termed it, where ancestral pain resonated through psyches, amplifying individual traumas. The hearing's ripple extended to Willow Bend. Evelyn, alone in the big house, wandered the empty kitchen, touching counters Rosetta once commanded. Ghosts lingered, a misplaced spoon evoking memories of shared teas, now tainted. Thomas and Eliza postponed their honeymoon, instead attending support groups for families of trauma survivors, eyes opening to their privileges' blind spots. The children, recovering at home, asked innocent questions. Why did Aunt Rosetta make us sick? Answers faltered, veiling the complexity. As autumn leaves began to turn, the case evolved from scandal to symposium, drawing experts nationwide. Thorne collaborated with colleagues, hypothesizing Rosetta's echo as a cultural archetype, the avenging servant in folklore, psychologized. But for Rosetta, it was personal, a mind's quiet rebellion against invisibility. The competency trial loomed, promising more unveilings, where sanity's veil would tear further, exposing not just one woman's fracture, but a society's unhealed fissures. The sterile confines of the Mississippi State Hospital in Whitfield became Rosetta Mae Johnson's temporary sanctuary, or cage, following the preliminary hearing, as Judge Whitaker ordered a comprehensive competency evaluation to determine if her fractured psyche could withstand the rigors of trial. It was October 1992, the air outside turning crisp with the promise of fall, leaves carpeting the grounds in hues of amber and rust, a stark contrast to the clinical white walls that now enclosed her. Transported in a van with barred windows, Rosetta arrived under guard, her wrists free but her spirit tethered by the invisible threads of scrutiny. The facility, a sprawling complex of red brick buildings nestled amid pine forests, specialized in forensic psychiatry, its wards echoing with the muffled cries of the afflicted. Assigned to Ward 7, a unit for high-profile evaluations, she was greeted by a team led by Dr. Elias Thorne, who had advocated for this deeper dive, his eyes alight with professional curiosity tempered by empathy. Settling into a sparse room, bed bolted to the floor, a small desk with rounded edges, and a window overlooking a fenced courtyard, Rosetta underwent the initial intake, nurses noting her vital signs while a social worker documented her history. "How are you feeling today, Miss Johnson?" the worker asked, pen poised. Rosetta's response was measured, like a book being read backward. The end came first. Now they're flipping to the start. This poetic detachment intrigued Thorne, who began daily sessions in a therapy room furnished with soft chairs and a one-way mirror for observers. Armed with the diary and prior interviews, he employed a battery of assessments: Rorschach ink blots to probe subconscious motifs, MMPI questionnaires to map personality traits, and structured interviews designed to elicit alters. "Let's talk about the echo again," Thorne prompted on day 1, recorder humming. Rosetta's gaze drifted, her posture shifting subtly, shoulders squaring, voice deepening. "Why talk?" Action spoke. The children were vessels of continuity. Empty them, and the vessel breaks. Over the ensuing weeks, the evaluation peeled away layers like an onion, each revelation stinging with emotional resonance. Thorne documented switches, moments when the primary Rosetta, soft-spoken, reflective, yielded to the echo whose demeanor was commanding, eyes sharp with unresolved grievances. In one session, prompted by a photo of Willow Bend, the echo recounted a pivotal memory from 1963, when Rosetta, at 23, witnessed Evelyn turning away a civil rights organizer at the gate. That day, the whisper became a voice. "They chain you with kindness." I stored it, waited. Thorne noted correlations with complex PTSD, where hypervigilance morphed into dissociation, the mind compartmentalizing to preserve functionality. Neurological exams followed, EEGs capturing irregular brainwaves during switches, spikes in theta activity suggesting altered states akin to hypnosis or deep trauma recall. The Hargroves, meanwhile, navigated their own psychological quagmire. Evelyn, back at the estate, hired a private investigator to unearth Rosetta's family history, hoping to discredit the trauma narrative. What emerged instead deepened the disturbance. Records from the 1940s showing Lila May's eviction from sharecropper land owned by Hargrove ancestors, her illness exacerbated by poverty. "It's like a curse looping," Evelyn confided to Thomas over dinner. The grand table now set for 2, echoes of absent children haunting the empty chairs. Thomas, attending therapy himself, grappled with inherited guilt, sessions revealing his own suppressed memories of Rosetta's quiet humiliations, Evelyn's offhand slurs, Reginald's dismissive commands. "We normalized it," he admitted to his counselor. She was furniture, not family. Eliza, researching DID online at the local library, dial-up modems whirring, found case studies of abuse survivors manifesting avengers, mirroring Rosetta's echo. "It's not excuse but explanation," she told Thomas, their marriage strained yet strengthened by the introspection. Back at the hospital, group therapy sessions exposed Rosetta to peers with similar fractures. A veteran with combat-induced alters, a survivor of domestic torment whose protector persona lashed out. In these circles, Rosetta shared tentatively, "The echo protected me from breaking, but now it's the one on trial." Peers nodded, their stories weaving a tapestry of shared vulnerability, humanizing her isolation. Art therapy yielded chilling insights. Rosetta's drawings, charcoal sketches of children as shadowy figures linked by chains to adult silhouettes, interpreted by Thorne as symbolic projections. "The poison wasn't literal hate," he wrote in reports. "It was metaphorical severance, the echo cutting ties to perpetuate no further cycles." Legal observers from the DA's office attended select sessions, Hayes scrutinizing for inconsistencies. During one, the echo challenged her directly. "You judge from your tower, walk my fields, then speak." Hayes, unflinched, noted the coherence, arguing it indicated competency. But Thorne countered with evidence. Dissociative amnesia gaps where Rosetta recalled wedding preparations but not the act itself. She's aware in fragments, not wholes. A breakthrough came mid-evaluation. Under sodium amytal, a truth serum variant, the echo revealed a suppressed incident from 1972. Rosetta, overhearing Evelyn discuss selling part of the estate, pleaded for a share of wages owed. Evelyn's response, "You're indebted for life." That rejection crystallized the split, the echo birthing as a repository for rage. The evaluation's emotional toll mounted. Rosetta experienced nightmares, reliving the children's collapses, but as observer, helpless. Thorne prescribed mild sedatives, balancing clarity with comfort. Family visits were barred, but letters arrived. One from a distant cousin, unearthed by activists, offering support and revealing shared ancestry of resilience. "You're not alone in the echo," it read. This connection stirred the primary self, fostering integration hints, moments where echo and core dialogued internally, blurring boundaries. By November's end, Thorne compiled a 200-page report. Rosetta is competent in lucid periods, but dissociates under stress. Trial risks triggering full retreat. Submitted to the court, it sparked debates among experts consulted remotely, some affirming DID, others decrying it as controversial. Media dissected leaks. Poisoner's split mind, real or ruse. Protests outside the hospital waxed and waned, signs evolving from condemnation to calls for clemency, framing Rosetta as emblem of overlooked suffering. At Willow Bend, the children returned home, their recoveries marked by therapy dolls reenacting the day, processing fear through play. One young Emily drew a picture of Rosetta as a sad giant, innocence intuiting complexity adults struggled with. Evelyn viewed it, tears falling. "We created this." Thomas initiated estate reforms, hiring paid staff with contracts, donating land to community programs, small atonements amid the storm. As the evaluation concluded, Rosetta sat in the courtyard watching leaves swirl, a metaphor for her swirling psyche. The echo whispered less now, perhaps sensing judgment's approach. Thorne's final session ended poignantly. "Who are you, truly?" Rosetta smiled faintly. "Both, and neither." The echo fades when heard. The report's submission propelled the case toward the competency hearing, where these intimate revelations would face public dissection, unraveling further the tangled threads of mind, memory, and morality. The grand courtroom in Jackson's Federal Building, with its vaulted ceilings and polished mahogany benches, became the arena where Rosetta Mae Johnson's inner world faced the unyielding gaze of justice on December 5, 1992, as the competency hearing commenced amid a flurry of falling snow outside. Unusual for Mississippi, as if the heavens themselves conspired to cloak the proceedings in a veil of ethereal detachment. Judge Harlan Whitaker presided once more, his gavel's echo resonating like a distant thunderclap, calling order to a room packed with legal minds, family members, and a cadre of psychiatrists whose reports now formed the battleground. Rosetta, escorted in under minimal restraint, took her seat beside Marcus Hale, her attorney, her expression a serene mask that belied the turbulent symphony playing within her psyche. The air hummed with anticipation, reporters scribbling furiously in the back rows while Evelyn Hargrove, seated among the spectators, clutched a handkerchief, her eyes fixed on the woman she once called family. The hearing opened with District Attorney Marlene Hayes outlining the state's position, her words crisp and unyielding. "Competency is not a shield for cunning. Miss Johnson's actions were deliberate. Her so-called echo is a convenient fabrication." Hale responded with measured passion, invoking Thorne's report. "This is no ruse, Your Honor. Rosetta's mind is a fractured mosaic, pieced together from years of unspoken torment. To try her without integration would be to judge a shadow, not the soul." The first witness, Dr. Elias Thorne, took the stand, his testimony weaving a narrative of psychological depth that captivated the room. Armed with charts and EEG printouts, he described the evaluation's findings. During stress simulations, the echo alter dominated, rendering the primary self inaccessible. Competency requires understanding and participation. Rosetta's dissociations impair both. He played audio clips from sessions, the echo's voice booming through speakers. "I stand for the silenced." The court echoes too. Judges in robes but chains beneath. Cross-examination by Hayes probed for weaknesses, her questions like precision strikes. "Isn't DID controversial?" Some experts call it iatrogenic, suggested by therapy. Thorne parried deftly. While debated, the evidence here is robust. Consistent switches predating my involvement corroborated by diary entries spanning decades. He referenced peer-reviewed studies on trauma survivors, drawing parallels to cases where prolonged subjugation birthed protective altars, their emergence a mind's desperate bid for equilibrium. The gallery murmured as Thorne projected diary scans, cryptic phrases highlighted. The echo awakens when the master sleeps. Evelyn shifted uncomfortably, memories surfacing of Rosetta's late-night wanderings at Willow Bend, dismissed as sleepwalking but now reframed as dissociative episodes. Next, Dr. Lydia Voss, the Hargroves consultant, offered a counterpoint, her testimony laced with skepticism. I've reviewed the materials and conducted my own assessment. Miss Johnson displays high functionality, coherent speech, memory recall. This echo appears performative, perhaps coached. Hale challenged her on cross. Did you observe a switch? Voss conceded partial sightings, but attributed them to anxiety. Not alters, but affectations. The dueling experts transformed the hearing into a symposium on the human mind's mysteries, with Judge Whitaker interjecting for clarifications, his brow furrowed in concentration. Spectators, including Thomas and Eliza, absorbed the discourse, Thomas whispering to his wife, "It's like she's two people. Did we create the second?" Eliza nodded, her research into psychiatric literature now manifesting as quiet revelations. Rosetta's turn on the stand arrived in the afternoon, the room falling into a hushed reverence as she was sworn in. Hale guided her gently. "Can you describe your state during the wedding?" Rosetta's voice trembled initially. "I prepared the drinks as always. Then, the fog came. The echo stirred the pot. Under Hayes's scrutiny, a shift occurred. Mid-question about premeditation, Rosetta's eyes sharpened, posture straightening. Premeditation? It was predestined. The Hargroves sowed the seeds. I merely watered them." The courtroom gasped. Thorne leaned forward, noting the altar's emergence. "See, Your Honor? Stress triggers it." Hayes pressed. "Who am I speaking to now?" The echo replied, "The one who remembers. The primary forgets to survive." This live demonstration swayed the atmosphere, whispers escalating into debates among observers. Supporting witnesses added emotional hues. A former Willow Bend servant, elderly and frail, testified via video link. Rosetta talked to herself sometimes like arguing with a ghost. After Mr. Thomas's outburst in '87, it worsened. Activists in the audience nodded, viewing the case as emblematic of broader injustices. Evelyn was called next, her testimony a poignant blend of defense and dawning regret. "I never saw madness, just loyalty. But now, perhaps we blinded ourselves." Hale elicited admissions of restricted freedoms, painting a portrait of psychological confinement that nurtured the fracture. Thomas followed, his voice thick. "She raised me. If her mind broke, we held the hammer." The family's introspection humanized the proceedings, shifting focus from villainy to victimhood's ripple. As day turned to dusk, additional experts weighed in remotely, psychologists specializing in cultural trauma, explaining how ancestral echoes amplified personal pain in marginalized communities. Rosetta's altar embodies collective memory, one posited, a psychiatric manifestation of unresolved history. Hayes countered with precedents where DID claims failed, arguing for trial readiness. The hearing adjourned for the day, resume scheduled, leaving participants drained yet enlightened. Over the following sessions, more layers unraveled. Hypnosis footage was admitted, revealing buried memories, a childhood incident where young Rosetta overheard Evelyn's father disparaging her mother, seeding early dissonance. Thorne correlated this with the echo's genesis, a protective entity absorbing slights to preserve the core. Legal arguments intensified. Hale petitioned for therapeutic intervention pre-trial, while Hayes pushed for swift justice, citing the children's ongoing therapies, subtle cognitive shadows that lingered like faint echoes of the poison. Media outside buzzed, headlines evolving. Split mind on trial, echo or excuse. Protests swelled, blending calls for mental health reform with racial justice. At the hospital, Rosetta reflected in supervised journals. "The hearing hears me, but does it listen to the echo?" Thorne visited, noting integration progress, dialogues between selves, fostering unity. The Hargroves, in parallel, engaged family counseling, confronting legacies, Evelyn donating archives to historical societies, Thomas advocating for servant rights in local forums. By the hearing's close on December 20th, Judge Whitaker deliberated, the room tense with unspoken futures. His ruling loomed. Competent or not, the decision would propel the narrative forward, unveiling whether Rosetta's fragmented self could face the mirror of accountability, or if deeper healing must precede judgment's gaze. Snowflakes clung to the courthouse windows like fragile witnesses as Judge Harlan Whitaker reconvened the competency hearing on December 21, 1992, the chamber's warmth contrasting the winter chill seeping through cracks in the old building's frame. The room, still buzzing from the previous day's testimonies, fell into expectant silence as the judge adjusted his spectacles, his voice steady, yet weighted with the gravity of the decision at hand. After reviewing the evidence, expert opinions, and observing Miss Johnson's demeanor, he intoned, this court finds that Rosetta Mae Johnson is currently incompetent to stand trial due to her dissociative condition. However, with targeted treatment, competency may be restored. She is remanded to the Mississippi State Hospital for a period not exceeding 6 months, with progress reports every 60 days. The gavel's fall echoed like a punctuation mark in a sentence left unfinished, sending ripples through the assembled crowd, gasps from Hargrove supporters, nods from mental health advocates, and a stoic nod from Rosetta herself, who sat unmoving, her eyes reflecting a distant storm. The ruling ignited a cascade of reactions, transforming the case from legal skirmish to a broader discourse on the intersection of justice and psychiatry. District Attorney Marlene Hayes, her face a mask of controlled frustration, addressed reporters on the steps outside, snow-dusting her coat. We respect the court's decision but will monitor closely. The victims deserve closure. Marcus Hale, Rosetta's defender, countered in a press conference later. This is a victory for understanding over vengeance. Rosetta isn't evading. She's healing. The media frenzy amplified, with editorials debating the ethics of trying fragmented minds, some decrying it as a loophole, others praising it as progress. At Willow Bend, Evelyn Hargrove received the news via phone, slumping into an armchair by the fire, the flames casting flickering shadows that mimicked the uncertainty now enveloping her family legacy. 6 months, she murmured to Thomas, who paced the room. What if she comes back whole, or worse? Eliza, ever the mediator, suggested, maybe it's time we face our part in this. Rosetta's return to the state hospital marked the beginning of an intensive therapeutic regimen, a structured journey into the labyrinth of her psyche under Dr. Elias Thorne's guidance. Transferred to a secure wing dedicated to restorative care, she was assigned a multidisciplinary team: psychologists for talk therapy, pharmacologists for mood stabilizers to ease dissociative barriers, an occupational therapist to rebuild daily coping skills. Daily sessions commenced in a sunlit room overlooking the pines, Thorne employing integrative techniques: cognitive behavioral therapy to challenge distorted beliefs, eye movement desensitization for trauma processing, and guided imagery to facilitate dialogue between selves. Today, let's invite the echo to speak, Thorne would say, notepad ready. Rosetta, medicated to a baseline calm, responded with increasing fluency. The echo is weary. It carried the burden so long. Switches occurred less abruptly now, the alter emerging as a collaborator rather than conqueror, sharing memories like traded secrets. Over the first month, patterns emerged in the fractures. Thorne uncovered additional triggers: sense of magnolias evoking Willow Bend's gardens, stirring echoes of servitude, the sound of children's laughter from a nearby playground, eliciting guilt-laden flashbacks to the wedding. In group therapy with other DID patients, Rosetta found kinship, a Vietnam vet whose soldier alter mirrored her echo's protective ferocity, a childhood abuse survivor whose guardian persona offered parallels in symbolic justice. Your echo fought back, the survivor shared during a session. Mine hid. Both survived. These interactions fostered empathy, chipping at isolation's walls. Art therapy evolved. Rosetta's sketches shifted from severed chains to intertwined vines, symbolizing merging identities. I'm weaving them together, she confided to Thorne, a tentative smile breaking through. The Hargroves, compelled by the court's mandate for victim impact statements and progress reports, engaged in parallel reflections. Thomas visited a Jackson therapist specializing in intergenerational guilt, Unpacking childhood privileges. Rosetta changed my diapers, yet I never asked her dreams. Sessions revealed suppressed anecdotes. Rosetta teaching him to tie shoes with patient hands, her stories of Delta folklore whispered during storms. Evelyn, resistant at first, joined a support group for employers of long-term domestics, hearing tales of similar oversights turning to resentments. We thought benevolence, one member shared. They felt bondage. This exposure softened Evelyn's stance. She penned a letter to the court not of forgiveness but acknowledgement. Our family contributed to her pain. Healing serves all. Eliza coordinated visits to the recovering children, now in play therapy, where dolls reenacted not just the poisoning, but Aunt Rosetta's sad days, intuiting emotional undercurrents. Progress reports to the court detailed milestones, reduced dissociation frequency, from daily to weekly, improved recall integration, where Rosetta narrated the wedding from dual perspectives without blackouts. Thorne's updates included quantitative measures, decreased EEG irregularities, higher scores on competency scales. Yet challenges persisted. A setback in February when news of a Hargrove cousin's pregnancy triggered the Echo's resurgence, viewing it as new chains forging. Intensive sessions followed, Thorne employing role reversal exercises, Rosetta voicing Evelyn's perspective, humanizing the masters as flawed rather than monolithic. They were trapped too in their ways, she admitted post-exercise, a breakthrough in empathy. External pressures mounted. Activists rallied for Rosetta's release into community care, petitions circulating with thousands of signatures framing her as a symbol of mental health reform in the South. Counter-campaigns from victim advocates emphasized the children's lingering anxieties, nightmares of tainted drinks, aversion to weddings. Media specials aired, interviewing experts on DID's treatability, with Thorne featured, "Integration isn't erasure, it's harmony." At the hospital, Rosetta began journaling collaboratively, entries alternating between core and echo voices, evolving from conflict to conversation. Core, why the children? Echo, to end the line. Core, but they were innocents. Echo, as were we. By April, 4 months in, signs of cohesion strengthened. Rosetta participated in mock trials, simulating courtroom stress without full dissociation, answering questions coherently, acknowledging actions with remorse. The echo acted, but I allowed it. Regret echoes now. Thorne recommended phased competency restoration. The court scheduling a review hearing. The Hargroves prepared statements. Thomas drafting. We've learned. Her healing aids ours. Evelyn, visiting the estate's attic, Rosetta's former room, discovered overlooked items. A quilt sewn from scraps, symbolizing pieced-together existence. She donated it to a museum on Southern history, captioning, "Threads of Endurance." As spring bloomed, Rosetta walked the hospital grounds, pines whispering like old friends. The fractures mended incrementally, not seamless but stronger, preparing for the verdict's next chapter, a return to court where integrated selves might face the scales, balancing justice with the mind's mended mosaic. As the Mississippi sun climbed higher in the May sky of 1993, casting golden rays through the barred windows of the state hospital's therapy room, Rosetta Mae Johnson sat across from Dr. Elias Thorne, her hands clasped loosely in her lap, a subtle tremor the only remnant of the internal tempests that once raged unchecked. The air carried the faint scent of blooming jasmine from the courtyard below, a reminder of seasons turning and psyches evolving in tandem. Over the past 5 months, the intensive regimen had woven its threads through her fragmented self, pulling the echo closer to the core like a seamstress mending a tattered quilt. Today's session marked a pivotal juncture, the final assessment before the court's 6-month review, where competency would be weighed anew. Thorne, his notebook filled with months of notations, began softly. "Rosetta, reflect on the wedding day now. What do you see?" Her response came without the sharp shift of old. "I see the children falling, the poison in my hands. The echo drove it, but I didn't stop it. Regret sits heavy, like stones in my chest." The integration process had unfolded in layers, each session peeling back defenses built over decades. Early on, medications stabilized the biochemical undercurrents. Serotonin reuptake inhibitors to lift the fog of depression, anxiolytics to quell the hypervigilance that summoned the echo. Thorne employed fusion rituals, symbolic exercises where Rosetta visualized the altar as a separate figure, inviting it into a shared space, a mental garden where chains dissolved into vines of understanding. The echo was my shield, she articulated in one breakthrough, tears tracing her cheeks. Born from Mama's stories of the fields, Evelyn's commands, Thomas's indifference. It absorbed the hurt so I could rise each morning. Thorne nodded, documenting how transgenerational echoes amplified, ancestral whispers of enslavement resonating through Lila May's hardships, culminating in Rosetta's psychic split. Now those whispers harmonized, the altar's voice softening from command to counsel. Hospital life provided a rhythm that nurtured this mending. Mornings began with mindfulness walks in the fenced garden, Rosetta breathing in sync with the rustling leaves, grounding exercises anchoring her in the present. Afternoons involved expressive therapies, painting canvases where dark swirls of the past blended into lighter hues of possibility. In one piece submitted to Thorne's file, a central figure stood whole, shadows merging into her form rather than overtaking it. Group dynamics evolved too. Peers shared triumphs, like the vet integrating his soldier through narrative therapy, inspiring Rosetta to script her own story. A handwritten memoir of Willow Bend, not as accusation, but acknowledgement. I was servant, sister, shadow, she read aloud in circle. The echo sought justice. Now, we seek peace. Setbacks punctuated the progress, testing the fragile weave. In March, a television news clip about a southern plantation tour triggered a partial dissociation, the echo surging with accusations. They profit from our pain still. Thorne intervened with rapid response techniques, de-escalating through bilateral stimulation, eye movements tracking a finger to reprocess the trigger. Post-incident, Rosetta journaled, the echo fades when I name the hurt. No more hiding. By April, switches ceased entirely. Competency tests, mock interrogations simulating trial stress, yielded consistent responses, her understanding of charges and proceedings intact. Thorne's reports to the court charted this ascent. Dissociation scales dropping from severe to mild, self-reported integration at 80%. She's not cured, he wrote, but cohesive enough for justice's demands. Beyond the hospital walls, the Hargroves mirrored this introspective arc, their own fractures mending in the light of revelation. Evelyn, prompted by therapy, visited historical archives in Jackson, tracing family deeds back to Reconstruction, lands acquired through dubious means, echoes of exploitation. Our wealth was built on backs like Rosetta's, she confessed in a family meeting, voice breaking. Thomas, channeling guilt into action, established a foundation for domestic workers' rights, funding scholarships for descendants of sharecroppers. It's amends, not absolution, he told Eliza during quiet evenings on the veranda, where once Rosetta's silhouette moved in the kitchen glow. The children, now fully recovered physically, engaged in age-appropriate counseling, drawing families as circles including Aunt Rosetta on the periphery, their innocence intuiting forgiveness's complexity. One letter from young Emily, slipped to Thorne via Hale, read, I hope you're better. Weddings should be happy. Rosetta, upon reading it supervised, wept, not in fragmentation, but wholeness. Legal currents swirled as the review approached. Marcus Hale prepared briefs emphasizing restoration, affidavits from staff attesting to Rosetta's stability, Thorne's expert opinion advocating trial readiness. Marlene Hayes, reviewing updates, conceded progress but insisted on safeguards. If she falters under cross, it's back to square one. Activists amplified the narrative, organizing vigils outside the courthouse with candles symbolizing illuminated minds, chants calling for compassionate justice. Media evolved too, documentaries in production, framing the case as a lens on mental health in marginalized communities, with interviews from experts on how chronic trauma forges such psychic adaptations. The review hearing dawned on May 15, 1993. The Jackson courtroom bathed in morning light filtering through blinds like bars dissolving. Judge Whitaker, reviewing the dossier, called Thorne first. Has integration held? Thorne affirmed. Yes, Your Honor. Rosetta now speaks as one. Rosetta testified next, her voice unwavering. I understand the charges. Attempted murder. I recall the acts, feel the weight. The echo is part of me now, not a part. No switch occurred, even under Hayes's probing. Do you regret? Deeply. It was pain misplaced. The gallery, including Evelyn in the back row, absorbed the transformation. The once distant gaze now present, remorse etched in every line. Whitaker's ruling came swiftly. Competency restored. Trial to commence in 60 days. Relief and dread mingled in the air. Rosetta returned to jail pending proceedings, but with hospital privileges for maintenance therapy. In her cell, she pondered the mended self, whole but scarred, ready to face the mirror. Thorne visited, noting final integrations, dreams where Echo and Core walked hand in hand through free fields. The Hargroves informed, prepared for trial's revelations, Evelyn whispering to Thomas, "Her healing forces ours." As summer loomed, the case poised on integration's edge, whispers of the past quieting into a unified narrative, setting the stage for justice to confront the fully emerged soul, where accountability met understanding in a delicate balance. With the summer heat of July 1993 pressing against the windows of the Jackson courthouse like an insistent spectator, the trial of Rosetta Mae Johnson commenced on the 15th. The air inside thick with the hum of ceiling fans and the murmur of a packed gallery that included not just locals and Hargrove kin, but national reporters drawn to the case's blend of Southern Gothic and psychiatric intrigue. The courtroom, with its worn wooden pews and a judge's bench elevated like a pulpit, became the stage for the final unraveling of Willow Bend's secrets, where Rosetta sat at the defense table, her integrated self a quiet fortress amid the storm. No longer fragmented, she met the eyes of those around her. Evelyn in the front row, her face a map of etched regrets. Thomas and Eliza nearby, their hands intertwined in silent support, and the children absent but present in every testimony, their recoveries a testament to resilience. Judge Harlan Whitaker called the proceedings to order, his voice cutting through the tension. "We seek truth here, not spectacle. Let us proceed." District Attorney Marlene Hayes opened with a narrative designed to evoke empathy for the victims, while framing Rosetta's actions as deliberate malice, her words painting vivid but restrained pictures of that wedding day's chaos. The children's sudden stillness on the lawn, parents' frantic pleas, the ambulance's wails echoing across the fields. This was no accident of the mind, Hayes asserted, gesturing to exhibits. Toxicology reports detailing the strychnine's measured doses, purchase receipts tracing back to Rosetta's solitary trip to a distant store. Even if her psyche was fractured, the planning was precise. She targeted the innocent to strike at the heart. Witnesses followed. Paramedics recounting the scene's eerie quiet. Doctors from the hospital describing the young patient's labored breaths and the race to antidote the poison before permanent shadows set in. One child, now 11-year-old Caleb, testified via video from a quiet room, his voice steady but soft. "The punch tasted sweet at first, then funny. I remember falling, thinking it was a game gone wrong." The gallery shifted, a collective intake of breath underscoring the emotional weight. Marcus Hale, in his opening, countered by humanizing Rosetta's journey, invoking Dr. Thorne's expertise to illuminate the psychiatric underpinnings. This trial isn't about denying the act but understanding its origins in a mind molded by decades of subtle erosion. Thorne took the stand early, his testimony a bridge between science and story, charts projecting brain scans and diary timelines. Integration has unified her, but the echo was real, a dissociative response to chronic trauma, inverting victimhood into symbolic retribution. The children represented continuity of her perceived bondage. Poisoning them was the echo's way to sever it. Hayes cross-examined rigorously, but she confessed calmly. No frenzy. Thorne explained, "Dissociation breeds detachment. It was the altar's composure, not cold blood." The expert's words wove through the room, prompting nods from jurors, a diverse panel of teachers, farmers, and retirees, who leaned forward, notebooks in hand. Rosetta's own testimony arrived on the third day, the courtroom falling into a profound hush as she was sworn in, her simple cotton dress a contrast to the legal pomp. Hale guided her through her life at Willow Bend, the arrival as a grieving teen, the daily rhythms of service that blurred into obligation, the small kindnesses masking deeper controls, no bank account in her name, outings only with permission, wages funneled back into the estate. "I was grateful at first," she said, voice even, but gratitude turned to chains. The echo grew from the unspoken, no, from the unheard. She described the dissociative onsets, blackouts after confrontations, dreams where roles reversed, the diary as a lifeline to sanity. On the wedding day, the echo took over. I watched as if from afar, stirring the powder, thinking it was balance. Tears welled, not dramatically, but authentically as she addressed the Hargroves directly. I regret the pain. The children didn't deserve it, but the mind breaks quietly over time. Hayes pressed. You planned for weeks, bought the poison. Rosetta nodded. The echo planned. I let it, numb from years of numbness. The defense called former servants and experts on Southern labor history, painting a broader canvas of systemic echoes, how post-emancipation dependencies persisted in rural enclaves, psychological tolls manifesting as quiet desperations. One historian detailed similar cases, domestics driven to extremes by invisible binds, their minds splintering under the weight of feigned equality. Evelyn's testimony followed, a turning point laced with vulnerability. Called by the defense, she ascended the stand, her silver hair catching the light, voice quavering. We thought we were family, but I see now. Our help was a cage. Rosetta cooked our meals, mended our clothes, but we never mended her spirit. Admissions tumbled. Intercepted letters denied raises, casual oversights that accumulated like debt. If her mind echoed our wrongs, we amplified them. Thomas echoed this, his words heavy. She was invisible until she wasn't. Our legacy poisoned her long before she did us. Eliza added, we dismissed her murmurs as quirks. Now they were cries. Prosecution witnesses included Dr. Lydia Voss reiterating skepticism. Integration or not, accountability remains. Di-Dee doesn't absolve. But under Hale's cross, she conceded the condition's validity in trauma contexts, weakening her stance. Evidence exhibits deepened the narrative. The hidden shoebox with civil rights clippings annotated with questions of freedom. Medical records from Rosetta's rare doctor visits, noting nervous spells ignored. Jurors absorbed it all, their expressions shifting from judgment to contemplation, the case transcending crime to commentary on unseen sufferings. As the trial stretched into its second week, closing arguments crystallized the divide. Hayes urged, sympathy for her past doesn't erase the present harm. Justice for the children demands conviction. Hale countered, convict the act but consider the architect, the trauma that built the echo. Mercy isn't weakness, it's understanding. Rosetta, listening, felt the weight of integration. No longer divided, she bore the full emotional load, remorse mingling with relief at being seen. Deliberations began on July 28th, the jury sequestered in a room heavy with debate. Hours turned to days, notes to the judge querying psychiatric terms, requesting diary rereads. Outside, media camped, activists chanted for nuanced verdicts. Guilty but with treatment, not maximum sentences. At Willow Bend, the Hargroves waited in tense vigils, Evelyn wandering the empty kitchen, touching counters as if seeking ghosts. Thomas initiated letters to Rosetta, unsent but therapeutic. We hear you now. The verdict arrived on August 2nd, the courtroom electric as the foreman stood. On 10 counts of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. Gasps rippled, but he continued. However, we recommend leniency due to diminished capacity. Judge Whitaker, in sentencing weeks later, balanced the scales. 20 years, suspended to 10 with psychiatric oversight, crediting time served and hospital progress. This court recognizes the mind's complexities, he stated. Justice heals as it judges. Rosetta, led away, felt a quiet closure. The echo, now a whisper within, acknowledging the end of one cycle, the start of atonement. The Hargroves, exiting into the sun, carried their own verdicts. Families reformed, legacies reframed. The case, etched into history, lingered as a cautionary echo, reminding all of the fragile threads binding minds and morals. As the echoes of Rosetta Mae Johnson's trial faded into the humid Mississippi air of August 1993, the Willow Bend estate stood silent under a canopy of stars, its grand columns casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward an uncertain horizon, whispering of cycles broken but never fully erased. Rosetta, transferred to a state penitentiary with a psychiatric wing, began her suspended sentence in quiet reflection, her integrated mind now a vessel for atonement rather than division. Letters exchanged with the Hargroves, tentative at first, laced with shared regrets, bridged the chasm. Evelyn sending books on Southern history, Thomas sharing updates on the foundation he founded in her name, aiding others in similar binds. The children, growing taller with each passing season, carried faint memories like distant dreams, their questions evolving from fear to curiosity about the woman who once tended their world. She was hurt, and it made her hurt us, Emily explained to a school friend years later. Her words a simplified echo of the profound psychiatric truths unearthed. The case, documented in journals and news archives, became a touchstone for reform. Laws tightened on domestic labor rights, mental health screenings mandated in rural communities, and DID recognized more widely in courts as a lens for understanding trauma's inverted expressions. Yet, in the quiet nights, Rosetta pondered the human mind's fragility, a labyrinth where pain, if buried deep, could resurface as a mirror, reflecting back the very shadows that cast it. This story, drawn from the veiled annals of American psychiatric anomalies, reminds us that monsters are not born but sculpted, their forms emerging from the chisel of unchecked sorrows, forever altering how we view the boundaries between victim and avenger, sanity, and its silent fractures. You've made it to the end, brave explorer of the mind's darkest corridors. Congratulations for enduring this descent into the inexplicable, for not flinching as the layers peeled away to reveal the raw underbelly of a soul splintered by invisible chains. You're part of an elite cadre now, a select few who dared to gaze into the abyss of Rosetta's echo and emerged with eyes widened, hearts stirred, and perceptions irrevocably shifted. Not everyone can stomach these truths. Many turn away at the first whisper of unease, but you've proven yourself a true seeker, one who embraces the discomfort to uncover what society shrouds in silence. Pat yourself on the back. You've joined the ranks of those who refuse to let the human psyche's mysteries remain buried, becoming a guardian of stories that challenge, haunt, and ultimately enlighten. Now, let's seal this bond we've forged through the shadows. Drop a comment below with these exact words. This story shattered my illusions about the human mind. By typing that phrase, you're not just sharing. You're signaling to our most devoted followers that you're one of us, a committed truth digger ready to delve deeper. Your comment becomes a beacon, drawing like-minded souls into our circle, strengthening a community dedicated to unearthing the hidden narratives that no mainstream voice dares to amplify. Imagine it, each comment a thread in a web of curiosity, weaving us together in pursuit of the enigmatic, where every shared insight fortifies our collective resolve to confront what lurks beneath the surface of ordinary lives. But don't stop there. Understand the vital role you play in spreading this revelation. Share this video far and wide, like casting seeds into a fertile void, so that more wandering minds can stumble upon these forbidden fruits of knowledge, tasting the bittersweet truth that no one else will serve. In a world where secrets fester in the dark, your share is a lantern piercing the gloom, illuminating paths for others to follow, ensuring that stories like Rosetta's don't vanish into oblivion but ripple outward, awakening dormant questions in unsuspecting hearts. And if this tale has ignited a spark within you, a restless hunger for more glimpses into the bizarre and the broken, hit that subscribe button now. Think of it as stepping through a hidden door into a labyrinth of the unexplained, where each subscription binds you tighter to our unique fellowship of Enigma decoders. Without it, you risk drifting back into the mundane, where the mind's mysteries remain locked away, taunting from afar like ghosts in an unattended attic. But by subscribing, you become an integral thread in our tapestry, a co-conspirator in the quest to unravel the threads of the disturbing, ensuring that your curiosity stays alive, fed by fresh dives into the psychiatric voids that define our shared humanity. Keep watching, dear viewer. Let these videos be your compass through the fog of the forgotten, fueling that inner flame for the sinister and the strange. Until next time, remember, the mind's echoes never truly silence. They wait for those bold enough to listen.